Ladies and gentlemen, LG.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of the Cleveland Sports 360 show. We're here live today coming at you from the streamingsportstalk.com studios, and we're going to be talking about some serious incidents here, ladies and gentlemen, about NFL brain traumas. On the show tonight, we're going to be joined by Kip Watson, who has a lot of experience in assessing brain injuries. And we have Anthony Dorsett Jr., the two-time Super Bowl appearing NFL player that played with the he played with the Raiders and he played with the Tennessee Titans. Turn down that music, Alex. You can cut the music right out. Live, coming from Texas, we will be joined and we'll be talking about NFL head traumas. We'll be joined, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, by Kip Watson, who runs Neurosport down in Texas, and Anthony Dorsett Jr. And we're talking about a serious problem that the NFL needs to sit down and reassess the way that they're dealing with these players, the way that these players get ready for life after football. For those of you that, and I don't know who out there wouldn't know, the Junior Seau suicide that happened weeks ago could have probably been avoided had the NFL did a better job in prepping these fellas for life after football. If you look back as far as even the 1970s, these players not only played professional football, but they worked regular jobs. They made relationships in the business community. They went out and they were able to make the transition from NFL star athlete to businessman in the community. It was an easy transition for these fellas. It wasn't something that we're seeing today where you have a multi-million-dollar guy who is a star to so many, and then all of a sudden his career is over and he feels lost. He feels left behind. It's almost like a Vietnam veteran when they came back to this country and they were shell-shocked. Nobody was there to help some of those guys. And we saw some of the effects that took place with these guys. Are we going to see the same effects take place with more former NFL players? Joining us live from Texas, Kip Watson is on the phone with us. Kip, you there?
Hey, Larry. Thanks for having me on again.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Has Anthony joined us yet?
Yeah, I'm here, Larry. How you doing today,
Great.
man?
Anthony Dorsett Jr., a former NFL player. So you guys, we're talking about NFL brain trauma tonight, and I know you guys have been doing a lot of work and a lot of assessments, and I know this Junior Seau tragedy had to hit you guys closer than it hit a lot of other people. What are your thoughts when it comes to something like that?
Go ahead, Kip. You can speak on it first.
Well, you're right. I think, Junior's death was, he wasn't alone, but he was certainly one of probably the most notable, I think, and the youngest of a recent string of suicides of former NFL players. He was the third former NFL player in 15 months to shoot and kill himself. Ray Easterling did it just 2 weeks prior to Junior. He was 62. Dave Drewerson did it about a year or so ago, and he was 50. And all of them struggling with some similar issues. And I think the thing that really hit me, because this kind of came at a time, Junior's death came at a time where I have been focused on researching these issues, and what I have found, and I think perhaps Junior maybe really, his death may be bringing this out even more so into the light, is just a huge stigma that is still there in the athletic world. It's not just the NFL, but in the athletic world in general. The stigma of asking for help if you really need it.
You know, that was one thing that I was going to question you on, Kip, was like you guys are involved and you know a lot of players. And Anthony, probably you are close with a bunch of guys. Have you noticed when these guys leave the NFL, is there a depression that sets in, man? I mean, I know there's a lot of head trauma and brain concussions and things of that nature. But what about just guys that maybe didn't have the concussions, or possibly everybody in the NFL suffers a concussion at one time or another? What kind of a level of depression have you seen, Anthony, sink into some of these fellas?
Man, I've seen it firsthand. I've experienced it firsthand. You know, I've dealt with it on my own. You know, and of course I've seen it. And it does not matter, you know, what level of you could just say success the player has had. It goes all the way from the guys who have been first-round draft picks all the way to guys who have been free agents in the league and just making their way into the back door. And it starts at a very early age. You know what I mean? This is a career that, you know, by the age of 32, 33 years old, you're being called an old man. And, you know, and we know in the big game of life, the real game of life, we know that at that age, you're just not really becoming a man in a lot of aspects, or a woman in a lot of aspects, and just getting to your full potential and things like that. But this game and the way that the sports works is, you know, of course, the younger, the better, and what have you done for me lately? So, you know, it is a much bigger epidemic than people could even ever understand. You know, you have to understand that you're dealing with all A-type personality people who have always been leaders in the forefront of everything that they've been doing, whether it's from their college team, high school team, Pop Warner team, and everything else like that. And now, you know, you're at the highest level of competition. And, you know, it's one of those kind of things where it's like what Kip said, the stigma behind actually showing a sign of weakness or showing a place where you can actually go out there and ask for help and not feel like you're wrong in doing it, or feel like you're being weak in any kind of way. So, I mean,
or that it could hurt you in any way, given that,
yeah,
you know, it is your job, you know.
But it does. But I mean, man, it happens so much, and it happens so, you know, so frequently. And it doesn't take for a guy to be out of football for his career. All it takes for a guy is to be put on injury reserve, you know, and you honestly see from that spectrum there, you know, like, oh, okay, like I'm really not part of this team right now. There's no one calling my name. You know, like I said, what have you done for me lately? Here today, gone later today. You know, and that's just the way the NFL works.
You know, Anthony and Kip, I don't know if you saw the little promotional piece I put out, the PR about the show we were doing tonight. It hit me when I was doing some research, and Kip, I read the article you forwarded me. It hit me that, you know, you're taking guys that probably played some sort of organized sport from the time they were little tykes up until like you're talking now, Anthony, 32, 33 years old. They've always had a coach nearby that they can count on. They've always had somebody telling them where to be, when to be there, how to do things, what we're going to do. And they always had that camaraderie of a team surrounding them, man. So now you leave the NFL. Like you said, I guess it really doesn't matter what position or what skill level you had or what level of success you had. All of a sudden, you find yourself alone, man. I mean, this could be the first time you're literally left alone since you were in grade school. Is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, and that is a great way to look at it, you know. And you know, a good segue into the whole grade school thing is, like, we have to understand this, okay? And we cannot put all the blame on the NFL when it comes to these head traumas and things like that. These guys, what you said, and you hit on it, these guys have started playing football sometimes in the early pre-adolescent years, you know, 8, 9, 10 years old, all the way through high school, all the way through college and everything else like that. It is not just about the hits that these guys have accumulated in the NFL, but it's a culmination of all the hits from that young age all the way up. You know what I mean? And literally, like, you know, it all begins to add up, and it all begins to take effect. But we already know that at the level once you reach the NFL, the contact, the amount of contact, and the way that the contact is delivered and received is on a higher level than any other level.
Well, one thing I found interesting, and I didn't even stop and think, I mean, you know, some of the things Kip brings to my attention, it makes you stop and think about a couple of situations, and one was what I just stated. The other situation is there literally is no time off in the NFL anymore. You know, back in the day, you had the Super Bowl right in the beginning of January. Now we're pretty much getting right back into mini camps and things like that. Not too far off right after the Super Bowl, as a matter of fact. Now you have your OTAs. I remember there was no football from, you know, January. You know, being in Cleveland, we really didn't have no football since the middle of December until the middle of July when training camp reopened.
Right, and it gave guys a chance to concurrently, you know, explore other options of obviously what they're going to do when their athletic career is over and transitioning, or finish up their education and do some of those types of things.
So do you
I mean, now with OTAs and everything else that's going on, and just, you know, there really is no more off season, and it's such a sad thing because at the same time, you know, the league does not mature the guys that come through the league to be guys that go into front office and things like that. You know what I mean? It's literally like they use up guys as players, and then a lot of times you do not see these guys turn around to be GMs. You don't turn around to see them be scouts. You don't turn around and see a lot of them being coaches and things like that. You know, you just see these players get used up, they get pushed by the wayside, and hopefully they play long enough to have some benefits and things like that to be able to help themselves out a little bit later on.
Just for our listeners, Anthony, what is that length of time? 6 years?
No, to become a vested player, you have to play 4 seasons.
And then after 4 seasons, are you receiving some sort of benefits?
You get your retirement, you get your annuity, you get your 401k. You know, you're a vested player. So at that point there, once you turn pretty much 55, then you're able to start, you know, receiving a lot of your benefits and things like that. And I mean, it's a crazy situation because there are benefits that are out there that are available for players before they hit 55 and everything else like that. But it's one of those type of deals where, unfortunately, if the league looks at you, or say a doctor that examines you feels like you're not in bad enough shape, or, you know, you're not disabled at 25% disabled, like the league likes to say, before you can actually get your benefits, then they won't allow you to have them.
Now,
you know, and now this is stuff that you've played for. These are benefits that you've earned. And now, after you reach a certain amount of time, once you're out of the NFL, you're supposed to be able to go get these benefits. But if a doctor looks at you and says that, oh, no, he's not 25% disabled right now, then you just don't get those benefits regardless of what's going on with you.
And probably it's an NFL doctor too, right?
Well, you know, at one point in time they had NFL doctors. Now they try to use outside sources and things like that as well. But, you know, I've been through the process. They sent me to go see a doctor that had never even been involved in sports. I had no idea what it felt like to be hit, and basically put me and categorized me in a group of athletes who played for 8 years and basically did this, that, and the third. Now, my 8 years compared to your 8 years, if you were a backup quarterback and I'm a starting safety cornerback in the league, do you think our 8 years are the same?
Absolutely not, especially if you're like a Brady Quinn kind of guy, you know? Hey,
you know what I mean?
I just have to state this, and I find it bewildering that some people may not know this, but on the phone tonight we're joined by Kip Watson and Anthony Dorsett Jr., who is a second-generation NFL player. Tony Dorsett was one of the all-time great running backs in the National Football League of all time. He's a Hall of Famer, and Anthony is his son. Now, Anthony, a lot of people question me after we do some of these shows, and they want to know, and I know this hits kind of close to home for you, they want to know, why are all these guys banding together and going after the NFL and suing them over these concussions? Are these guys out of money? And you know, and let me just finish this for you. A lot of guys say that to me. They're suing the NFL because they ran out of money, and then I look right back at them and I say, you're meaning to tell me a guy like Troy Aikman is out of cash? I don't buy it, you know. But Can you elaborate on this a little bit? I mean, what do you say to a guy that says...
There's not everybody's not in the same situation as Trey Aikman.
Right.
Everybody doesn't have Jerry Jones in his hip pocket and everything else like that, who's going to facilitate to make sure that everything that goes on with Trey Aikman in any way that he can. Like, those triplets are treated different than anybody else that was in that organization with them. You can guarantee that. All right? Between Emmett, Michael, and Troy, those guys get favoritism from those teams in those eras. I guarantee you that they get more favoritism from the ownership, management of that team than any of those other guys do. Now, in the big scheme of things, you have to understand this, okay? Like, when guys are out here and they're signing these big contracts, you have financial advisors a lot of times. And you know, we've talked about this before. You come from an area, you come from a background where you're not even used to having thousands of dollars, and all of a sudden you're a millionaire. All right? Now, you have financial advisors, and I'll step outside of football, and we could bring boxing into the equation. Let's talk about Evander Holyfield, because right now he's been in the news. All right? Now, Evander Holyfield, at his height of boxing, he was probably making a couple $1 million a fight.
Absolutely.
All right, now he's basically, from what I'm understanding, he's almost $400,000 in child support debt, and his house has gone into foreclosure. Now, why did Evander Holyfield need to even have a house that's set on 105 acres, had over 20,000 square feet, and all this other stuff? Like, where did he see that in growing up? Where did he get that from? He never seen that. But then the upkeep of that home alone in itself is going to cost how many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year? You know, and so you have guys who have financial advisors and things like that, but as long as that financial advisor is getting his commission as well, a lot of times these guys are just yes men. Oh, yeah, you can do that. Oh, yeah, go ahead and do that. Oh, yeah, go do this. But let me make sure that I'm getting my commission out of there first.
Absolutely.
You know, and so what happens is these guys end up going broke because it's not necessarily the things they bought, but it's maintaining that lifestyle after those checks are not coming in week to week.
Well, the question is, though, these guys that are banding together that brought a suit against the NFL that suffered these concussions.
The NFL knew, and you have to understand, you know, there was information out there about all this stuff prior to that had not been released, that had not been put out, and everything else like that. So there's information that the NFL knew, the doctors knew about, and everything else like that, that was just not released, that was not given to the players, that was not made common knowledge to the players as well. So what the players are going back and saying, okay, well, look, if you guys knew that in X amount of years, or if you guys have done studies like this and you knew that there's a possibility that this could happen, why wouldn't you go ahead and make it out there and make that information open to everybody?
And that way you guys would have the knowledge to make your own decisions whether you wanted to continue forward or not. So basically what the NFL did was conceal the information and withhold it from the players.
Let me ask you this, Larry. How many times have you ever seen before these last couple of years guys sitting back who've got concussions in college and stuff like that and just say, you know what, I'm not playing now. I'd rather not play. Or a guy who, or just step away from the game. These guys, they played through that stuff. But now that it's become an epidemic and it's a problem and guys are actually seeing it, now guys are sitting back saying, like, nah, I'm not even going to put myself in that situation.
Right. And is that because of the knowledge now, Kip?
Former players not coming out and saying, you know, they're not going to allow their children to play football.
Right, right. Well, we just had...
the only person I know that said that so far is Kurt Warner.
There have been others, but I couldn't... there was one other guy, I can't think of his name now, but I saw an interview with...
And
well, the linebacker really for the New York Giants.
At the end of the day, I accept and I appreciate those guys' opinions, but, like, really... keep it to yourself. Kurt Warner, the only reason you even have the platform you have is because you played football.
Well,
no one would even know who you were if you were still stacking groceries in that grocery store, wherever you were at. You didn't have to step on the field.
Right. That was the luckiest thing that ever happened to Kurt Warner when they found him in the grocery store.
That's the best thing that ever happened to that man, okay? And we all know that.
And he wouldn't even be able to afford them 5 kids if he didn't do that.
The NFL as a league, they're part of the stigma problem, because here's what stigma does. The word stigma, it keeps people quiet. And so where does it come from in these circumstances, whether some of the dementia and mental issues are induced from the traumatic brain injuries, or whether it's just a struggle with transition. The fact is the stigma comes from the league office. It comes from players themselves. It comes from our culture, the fans. It comes from the media. It comes from the team offices. What you said at the beginning, Anthony, about thou shalt not show weakness is really kind of the mantra that all of these entities tend to put forth as the standard of thought and behavior.
You're a play away from your career being over at all times.
Absolutely.
Right? And so if there's a situation where it's something that, like if you're just out there and you break a leg or you tear up a knee or something like that, then, you know, that's something that is pretty much obvious and everyone can see. There are so many guys out here walking around from play to play, bell rung, concussed, or whatever the deal may be, but they know that that backup is one play away from taking that position. They know that they may have an incentive in their contract that stipulates that they play X amount of plays that they're going to receive their incentive. You know, so there's so many other things that go into this thing as well. You know what I mean? Just outside of the fact of just saying, oh, I got hurt on this play or I'm injured right now.
Well, we saw it in the one movie where Lawrence Taylor had to have one more tackle to get his bonus. I know it was only a movie, but it had to be based on some real life things. But the thing what I'm saying is, being a second generation NFL player, how have you seen this treat your father, Anthony? I mean, what are some of the things that he had a problem dealing with now? Are you at liberty to discuss any of that?
My dad has, you know, I can honestly say, you know, like I felt like I was in the NFL 2 times because, you know, I was born the same day of my dad's first college game. I experienced every part of the NFL, you know, as far as when he was playing and everything else like that. And, you know, like it was one of those kind of things with my dad, whereas, you know, he had so much success and everything else like that, that the issues that did come and that were out there and things like that, you know, he was first ballot Hall of Famer. You know, he stayed busy as soon as he got out the league. He had opportunity to do some TV and stuff like that as well. So, you know, but like now my father's having issues with his brain and stuff like that because everyone knows that he is part of the concussion lawsuit against the NFL as well. And it's not a situation with my father by any means where he's out here trying to accumulate money or anything else like that. No. My father has a test to show that he does not have brain activity in certain areas of his head over accumulation of hits from playing football. Now, what does that do? It leads to all types of things. Memory loss, agitation, just a number of different things that go on. You know what I mean? And it's just an unfortunate thing to honestly sit back and to see it firsthand. But to also at the same time understand, like, you know, when I see these guys committing suicide, when I hear Dave Duerson's son on TV doing the interviews and stuff like that, you know what I mean? I honestly feel like, you know, we have been fortunate in a lot of areas, both me and my father, because at the end of the day, you know, like I said, I've been there too. I've been depressed as well since I've been at the league. But there's enough other things in us that have been put in us to also keep us from doing anything outside of, you know, hurting ourselves and things like that. And I just pray for the and I'm thankful for the foundation that has been instilled. You know what I mean? You know, it's just one of those kind of things. Whereas, you know, I speak about Aliquippa, Pennsylvania a lot, where we're from. And one thing that it teaches you learn a lot of heartache at an early age because you see a lot of bad. But then you learn how to work hard and you understand what hard work is about. You learn how to fight. And not taking anything away from those gentlemen who have gone through these situations and have lost their lives and committed suicide or anything else like that, because like you never know how serious and how hard it was on those guys. But I'm just thankful for the fact that my father and my peers and a lot of my friends who have gone through this have not, you know, gone that direction.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a tragic event. Now, Kip, you've been doing a lot of research into this, and I think when you bring up the word stigma, and Anthony could probably attest to this too, but when you bring up the word stigma, nobody wants to, you know, it's like coming off a game. How you feel? I feel great. Can I get back in, coach? You know, nowadays when you get a brain injury, we just had Carlos Santana, who's the Cleveland Indians catcher, took a foul tip off of his face mask, suffered a slight concussion, and hasn't played been able to play baseball for the past week. They just cleared him today to start back in the minor leagues with a designating hitting only. He's not allowed to play behind the plate. So the concussions today are being handled at a much different level than what they were being. I mean, we saw it with Colt McCoy last season. It's almost like the National Guard came into Cleveland to say, did you guys handle this situation correctly? So, Kip, with this stigma hanging over the professional athlete's face and, you know, the he-man mentality, how much of that do you think goes into a guy like Junior Seau taking his own life?
Well, you know, I don't know in Junior's case. We can only speculate, and then just based on what we've kind of been finding out, kind of as his last days kind of unfolded, he did have a lot of sleep deprivation issues. You know, he was in the league for a long time. We don't know the exact results yet of any kind of brain trauma yet, but what we do know about this brain disease, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, is that it does cause dementia, which is incurable and degenerative. It does compromise neural brain activity, like Anthony was talking about, and that neural activity is often associated with depression and memory loss. A lot of these guys are suffering with blurred vision and headaches, along with an inability to sleep. And when you don't sleep, you have accumulated effects of not sleeping, that can lead to psychosis. That is a very common, whether you have a brain disease or not. If you're not getting the right amount of sleep and it's you know, accumulated over days and weeks and months, you can go into a psychosis because your body needs to have sleep. And so this CTE is what it's called, has been associated in the past with boxers, but now they're finding it. They have found it in more than 20 dead former NFL players. So it is something we need to pay more attention to, and I think the league definitely is taking a look at that now. How can we physically protect our players better, whether through equipment or like you were just describing, and how we get them back into their, sport of choice, baseball, football, whatever it may be, at the appropriate time.
I mean, we're being alarmed to this, head activity taking place. Even in girls soccer was a big deal on television lately. All the traumatic hits to the head that these young women are taking in soccer. And this guy came up with some kind of a new head device, headband of some sort. I guess it has some padding in there. But when you start talking not sleeping for days at a time, I mean, that's something I can relate to, on different emergency situations where I had to be up for 2 or 3. It just doesn't even seem like your body can function correctly. Do you think?
No, it can't.
Do you think?
Man, I have been through, and my mother seen me do it, and she couldn't believe it. I stayed up 3 days straight.
Oh.
3 days straight. I mean, and you have to understand, like I'm already in the process of trying to go through my benefits and things like that. I've met with doctors. I've told them I have sleeping disorders. I had sleeping disorders for a number of years. And I've told them about memory loss. I've told them about this. I've told them about that. Every time that I've gone to try to do anything about benefits, I've been denied. Every time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how many concussions did you?
Now, if the next time, if I walked in the door and say I was drooling, or I couldn't remember how I got there, or something like that, I'm sure then right then and there, of course, immediately, here, you need to have your benefits. But nothing to help with preventive medicine, only to help to make sure that once you get there that you're taken care of, but nothing to help prevent you to get there prior to.
Right. How many concussions do you think you suffered in your career, Anthony?
Man, I know honestly that I had way more than I've ever been diagnosed on. I can't even begin to tell you how many plays and times I've been in games. And, to honestly sit up here and say it happened every week would be, maybe an over-exaggeration. But for it to happen at least 3 to 4 times a season, easy. Oh, all the time. You know what
Well,
I mean?
I tell you right now, I don't think it happening every week is that far-fetched. I mean, you know, if you think about how the human brain is suspended inside the skull, it doesn't. It's just a concussion is just simply your brain moving back and forth at a relatively high impact, isn't it, Kip? I mean, explain that to us. The brain suspended.
Yeah, it's just a brain. It's a brain bruise, basically.
Right. But
your
I mean,
brain is floating
right.
inside your skull, per se, is an easy way to visualize it. So as you know, the equipment can get as safe as we need to make sure it's more safe than it has been. But the fact is, you know, strong force, there's not much you can do to prevent your brain from hitting your skull and getting bruised. I mean, that's just through sheer force that will happen, irregardless of what kind of protection you have on your helmet. Obviously, we have to have good protection, but at the end of the day, a strong force hit is not going to protect your brain from hitting your skull.
Well, when your head's moving towards the ground at a rapid speed, or even another player's running and it bashes you into that, you know, the side of your helmet. Yeah, or you get
knocked backwards, you hit the turf.
Right.
You know,
I mean, your head's moving at a rapid speed, and it's that sudden stop that gives you the jolt where your brain actually keeps moving in the same direction till it hits the inside of your skull. Isn't that about correct?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so it's that sudden stop that really does the damage.
Injury to prevent.
Right. Yeah, I can't even see. I mean, the helmets are pretty safe. You know, I can't even see a way to you increase the helmet or anything. I mean, your head is still going to be moving at a certain speed, and it's that sudden stop.
Well, one thing that always helps out, and two things that actually always help out is, number one, a good helmet, number two, a good mouth guard. And they've shown that through wearing mouthpieces and things like that you also are able to cut down on the risk of concussion as well. You know, but you have a lot of guys who don't wear mouth guards as well. So, you know, some things need to become more mandatory instead of optional in the NFL. You know, and once that happens, I think that, you know, that will also help as well. Think about it. Anytime a boxer's mouthpiece is knocked out his mouth, the fight is put on hold until he gets his mouthpiece back in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. Now, you got guys who are playing in the NFL who don't even have a mouthpiece in when they step on the field.
That's hard to believe. I did not know that, Anthony. I mean, I don't see why anybody would go out there without one, man. What do you think?
Maybe we don't have more sliced tongues.
Now, Kip, in your organization of helping athletes or assessing them, do you deal with anybody that is a post-NFL player? I know you guys are a lot of times getting ready to put people in the professional sports. Are you dealing with them on the back end of this at all?
Yes. Definitely. That transition phase, you know, what am I going to do next, is very important. And so we do that with the draft candidates, but also the guys that are coming out, and they need to learn what else they're good at doing because, you know, 75% of their work life is going to happen after their athletic career. And so, and I think, you know, it is interesting. The NFL does have programs in place for these kinds of things, but oftentimes, and this is where stigma comes into it, the guys that need it the most don't take advantage of those programs. Hold on. Let me go ahead and say this. Let me go ahead and say that. You know, like, those programs that you know about, Kip, those programs are not programs that they come in, they talk to the players about doing. There are programs that I found out that were accessible to me that I didn't even know was accessible to me while I was playing. Only because all those benefits, they don't go out there and just tell you, like, oh, here, this is there for you to be able to do it. This is it. That's I know, and that's what I think part of the problem with the stigma of the league is they put these things in place, but then nobody knows about them unless they go seeking after it, which some of the guys do, but not enough, and certainly not the ones that actually really need it. And so I do think that's a problem. The NFL has got to be better about making sure they're educating every player, not just the draft candidates and the rookie symposium, But you know what? The second-year guys, the third-year guys, it needs to be repetitive. Oftentimes, and this is key for everybody, it's repetition, 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 till we get it. And so that's why I think there's a dual responsibility here. The athlete absolutely has 100% responsibility for the results he wants in his life. So, in Junior's case, that was his choice. It was a bad choice. But every guy has responsibility for his life. Now, the league, I think, also has responsibility to do better at educating and getting these guys prepared not only for their athletic career, but what's going to happen next. And I think
let me stop.
Have some
Kip,
things in place, but it's not enough.
Hey, Kip, let me stop you right there for 1 second, because I just have to ask this question. What is the NFL's Players Association doing? Are they not involved making the transition back to public life with the former players? I mean, how does that work, Anthony? Is this Players Union? Do they take money from the players? How does the Players Union survive in the NFL?
So, yeah, the Players Union survives by players paying dues every month and every year for them to be able to, you know, like with the whole legal case that the players had against the owners, okay? You know, in order for us to pay for that, of course, where do you think that money came? That money comes out of players' dues in a pot that is basically built up for us to be able to go to court, be able to handle things like that and stuff like that. Now, I want to say this. Like, every year you get a disciplinary handout. You get a handout that explains to you what the referees are looking for, what your uniform is going to be looking like. You get a folder. This is at training camp. This is what the team gives you. So you get a folder about uniform, you get a folder about the rules, you get a folder about team policy and everything else like that. Why isn't that every year that there's a folder given to everyone that says, okay, these are the benefits that are available to you while you're playing right now. These are the benefits that are available to you as soon as your career is over. They don't do that. That doesn't happen. This does not happen every year. If guys were able to see this stuff as frequently as they're able to see how you're supposed to dress in your uniform, how you're supposed to conduct yourself in the facility, guys will be more familiar with what's going on with these programs and everything out there that's available for them. But because it's not common knowledge, like Kip said, it's almost unheard of. Guys, you know, and just so people understand, you've been catered to as an athlete all your life, from the time that you were in Pop Warner all the way up to the NFL. You haven't had to go really look for anything. People bring it and give it to you. Right, right.
That's where I was going with the Players Association.
To some degree, there's a problem with that. You're not prepared for reality.
To some degree, you could say that, but once again, you would have to be an NFL player, and you'd have to be walking in those shoes to actually understand how it feels to be catered to like that. So at the end of the day, you don't even see the negligence or the wrong in what you're doing. It's become second nature. It seems like it's right.
Well, that was the norm.
You still have responsibility for your life while
just like I said, in the way that your life has been maintained. In the way that your life has been maintained, it's hard to explain this to somebody who's never been through it because they just don't understand it. It's hard for fans to understand how guys who make $1 million a year can lose $1 million in less than 6 months. Because if you've never been there, you can't. You can't understand that. But you can't understand how many people are coming at guys on a daily basis, trying to say, okay, I got this for you, I got that for you. You could do this, you could do that, and at the end of the day, you got so many snakes in the grass anyway.
So back to the original.
It's easy for a person to sit back and say, yeah, you're responsible for your life and everything else like that. But the responsibility that you have taken to train and do everything else, and when everything else has been brought to you in a certain kind of way, it's just the way that it works out.
Well, back to the original problem, it seems to me like there's no education for life after football, and I think that's some of the points you were bringing up, Kip. Why isn't it that some of these, especially with a guy like Junior Seau taking his own life, why isn't it that some of the older players who are out there, maybe around your age, Anthony, are sitting around watching and observing? How come you guys don't all get together and get some kind of a platform in place to speak up for what's going on here, man? We need an educational system in place.
There are some guys that are actually, there's pockets of former players doing that type of thing. The NFL actually and Morehouse School of Medicine have teamed up with a symposium type thing. They call it the NFL Community Huddle. and it's made up of former players and other professional athletes that have been kind of on that speaker circuit talking about these types of issues, mental health issues, and how to make that transition once you're done.
No, Larry, I'm a former player. I don't know nothing about this. And I talk to Kip on a regular basis. I've never heard anything about this program right here.
Right.
And
I'm a former player, and these are my peers.
Right.
You know what I mean? That are doing this.
Well, that's what I see as part of the problem here.
Part of it is there's not an organized effort from the league, like Anthony was saying, to make sure that this information is out there repeatedly so that at least these guys are seeing it and they're given that opportunity to learn and educate themselves.
Now, what kind of a role do you see needs to be played here, Kip? What do you see needs to be done to make sure that these tragedies don't take place again? Or is there anything we can do to avoid it?
I think there's several things that need to be done. I think actually a lot of these former players, including like Brandon Marshall, Herschel Walker, Terry Bradshaw, they've all come out and have been sharing their stories of, you know, the mental health issues that they've dealt with over the years. And I think they, being as well known as they are, and others that are starting to speak out, is helping deal with the stigma that it's okay. But I think ultimately we've got to take their efforts, we got to take a lot of these grassroots programs that are out there, like Dignity After Football, Brent Boyd's organization. Mike Ditka has spoken on behalf of that organization. I think there needs to be a collective effort. There needs to be some collaboration, I guess, you know, is a great word for it, between the NFLPA, between the NFL, to create a culture where it says, you know what, it's okay to ask for help, and guess what, your job will not be on the line. But I think that's going to take time, because the culture right now, whether it comes from the media or the fans, the players, the league, the coaches, is not like that. And so I think a lot of what they're doing for first-year players, actually, the symposium for the rookies is they're doing a lot of good right there, but that's kind of where it ends. I think there should be a veteran symposium where they do a continuation of what they do at the rookie symposium. Have 8 classes taught by a former player and a clinician about building and improving your mental skill set, things that you need to do concurrently with your athletic career as well as the career that comes next. I think career counseling is important. We're obviously seeing a lot of issues with baby mama drama. So marriage counseling, I think, is another big part of what can be helpful to these guys.
Well,
I think the alumni also, obviously we're seeing issues there. Career counseling, alumni involvement, continuing financial health education, and those types of things should still be a part of what the NFL is educating their current and former players about.
Well, that's where, you know, I think guys like Anthony Dorsett and you, Kip, I mean, you're so active with a lot of these players, and you see it. You see them when they're going in, and you see it when they're coming out. And something just needs to be organized. Maybe you guys could even approach the Players Association and get something in place. I mean, you definitely have a good grasp of what you're talking about here. And put some things in place that can help these guys. I mean, what's holding you up from that? I mean, you're so involved. What's stopping you from reaching out to that level?
Actually, nothing. I have a PowerPoint presentation all ready to go that all this 8 weeks of research that I've been doing, I've been putting together, and my hope is to then begin presenting it to different entities, whether that's the league office themselves, the PA, I mean, athletes themselves, coaches, scouts, front office. I mean, anybody who's willing to listen and then hopefully we can get some kind of organized think tank together to really organize a process from when a guy initially comes in to, say, a training camp to the day he transitions out. He's going to be equipped, you know, with the right information and the right kinds of tools. But then ultimately, yes, it's up to him to what he does with it.
Well, sure. It's everything's you can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink it. It's almost like you need a counselor at every team facility that deals with this on a day-to-day basis. I mean, if you look around at some of these NFL franchises and some of the people that are sitting around in there, a vice president in charge of media relations, a vice president in charge of the vending machine. I mean, come on, man. You're telling me they can't put a few bucks aside and have a guy that sits in these organizations and takes care of making sure that these players understand sooner or later football is going to be over. You know, sooner or later, baseball is going to be over, whatever the professional sport is going to be. Anthony, what do you see happening if you were to, let's say you were to approach the Players Association with an idea like Kip has? How do you see them perceiving that?
Man, to be quite honest with you, Larry, I've approached the Players Association on something already this year. I had a chance to speak with D when we were out at the Super Bowl as well. And, you know, with this year being the way that last year ended up and the way this year is coming back in, the Players Association has had a lot on its plate, more than usual, okay? And so literally, you know, and you got to understand that how many people are actually trying to go at the Players Association with different opportunities, different ideas, this, that, and the third, and everything else. So it's a situation that you can walk into, but there's no guarantee that how long the process of turnaround is actually going to take anyway.
Absolutely, and I think it's just going to be something that you have to keep fighting for, and you're going to have to line and get an alliance of, I mean, how old are you now, Anthony?
Hey, man, I'm in my 30s.
Right. But, I mean, you're still in your 30s, quickly approaching the next decade of life, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I'm in my 30s.
Right.
I'll talk about the next decade when I get to it.
I'm in my 40s, Larry, and I'm quite fabulous. I love being in my 40s.
God never promises us tomorrow no matter what age we are. Let's just get that right out in the open, man. But the thing is, what I'm saying is you got a large group of guys your age, Anthony, that are former NFL players, man. And this has to be a wake-up call, the tragedies that are taking place with some of these injuries that these guys are self-inflicting. And
man, when Junior killed himself, I mean, me and my cousin's Ty Law, right. And me and Ty were sitting back and it's like, I mean, we was both like, man, what in the heck is going on? You know what I'm saying? Like, seriously, like, what's going on? You know what I mean? And is there something that, like, say, is there something like 5 years from now, 4 years from now, am I going to be sitting around and is my brain going to start telling me something different? Am I going to start, you know, like what is going on? Like, seriously. And so, yeah, there have been a number of my peers who have been concerned and everything else like that as well. But, you know, it's just one of those kind of things, whereas you just, like, come on, man. Like, Junior Seau. Junior Seau was a people's guy. He was a team guy. Everybody that met Junior was a touchy-feely guy. When he met you, he was rubbing on your shoulders. What's going on, buddy? What's going on, guy? You know what I'm saying? He was one of those type of guys, you know, always smiling, stuff like that, you know. And to honestly, I mean, this was a guy who was doing a TV show. I mean, you honestly, we just never know where somebody is. And, you know,
well, that's the scary part about the whole thing, man. I mean, a guy like Junior, he was definitely a popular guy. I mean, 20 years in the NFL. And like you just said, I mean, there's people we don't know where they're at that never had these sort of things happen to them. But when you get a guy as visible as Junior Seau, and that's why, I mean, it's as unfortunate of a situation as this really is, you guys need to grasp this. And this is something that you need to build from. and you need to put something together that the NFL can take a serious look at. Because when you get the visibility of a guy like Junior Seau, I mean, that knocked everybody for a loop, Anthony. I mean, not only you and your cousin.
Let me tell you something. It's like this, like literally, and this happened to me one day. I was sitting in my house by myself, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like watching TV or something like that, and like literally it hit me to finally sit back and to look at everything that was going on around me. The house, the work, the cars, me taking care of my family, where people were at, how good everybody was doing. But up until that point, man, I had never even sat back to even take notice of anything that was going on, because it was just such a grind and such a monotonous thing for me to continue to work, that I had not even appreciated anything that I had accomplished.
Yeah, I mean,
didn't even have time to even sit back and say, "Oh man, that was a good game," or like none of that. All I knew was work. The next day, go to work. The next day, go to work. The next day, and literally, when I'm sitting up in my house and I call my mom, and I'm like, "Mom," I'm sitting here, and it's just now hitting me. You know what I'm saying? I'm seeing stuff, and she's like, she couldn't believe it. And of course, my mom is my biggest fan, and she's like, "Baby, you've done well by everybody. You've done good, this, that, and the third." Like, and I'm just sitting there like, but I can't even tell.
Well, you know what, the people don't understand that the level of competition, I mean, I know the level of competition was great when your dad played, but today, the level of competition, I mean, these guys are bigger, they're faster, they hit harder. I mean, they hit hard back when your dad played football. But you got to admit, Anthony, the level of competition, and that's why it's a year-round training thing now. It's not like the old days when you had 4 months off.
But guys aren't lasting as long. Guys are not playing as long. Guys are not having the type of careers that, you know what I mean, that my dad and those guys had. You know what I mean? Guys are coming along. You know, guys are retiring after 5, 6, 7 years in the league, retiring.
Because of the level of punishment that the human body hasn't evolved much since the time your dad played till now, you know?
Well, at the end of the day, you know, what they're going to tell you is that it's all relative, okay? So you could say, like, back in the day when my dad was playing, the guys were moving like this and they were hitting like that. Well, of course, as time has gone on, the speed of the game has gotten faster, guys have gotten bigger. So it's all relative. That's what they try to make you think or believe anyway.
I think they had more time to recover, too, in the off-season, like
Absolutely.
we talked about a little bit earlier.
But then the argument was that you didn't have the science and the medicine that you have now to help guys recover as well. So, you know, you guys have to understand, the NFL is a unilateral league. Unilateral. They're always going to have the upper hand regardless of what anybody says, thinks, or brings to the equation. That's just the way it is.
Well, I think that technology plays a part of it too. I mean, you know, the technology we have today, we did not have that technology, Kip, back when Tony Dorsett played football. I mean, the training facilities today are state of the art. I mean, we didn't have that sort of thing back then. But we got about 3 minutes left in the show tonight, because we actually cut out of here about 6:55. But what do you guys have that you really want to put out there on the table? We have 3 minutes left.
Well, I think the one thing that I really want everyone to understand is that everyone has a part to play in this stigma issue. Everyone has contributed to the stigma, and then everyone can do something about the stigma. And it's something we need to take seriously in light of the pattern and what we're seeing. And I think his name was Eric Hipple, and he's a former NFL player, quarterback. And he realized himself that he was battling depression, and he began doing something about it. Then he saw his son going through the same thing. His son, unfortunately, ended up committing suicide. But Eric Hipple wrote this great book called Real Men Do Cry. And he said this just recently: make no mistake, stigma is everyone's problem, not just an athlete problem. So I think that we do need to come together somehow and collaboratively come up with a solution to what's going on.
And I think you're on the right track. Now, Kip, how do people get a hold of you? Just suppose a player needs some advice, needs help. How do they get a hold of Kip Watson?
Well, they can find me on Twitter at KipFit, or they can find me on my website, which is neurosportathlete.com, which is NEUROSPORT athlete.com. And they can always call my office here in Frisco, Texas, which is 972-380-1842.
Thank you, Kip. Now, Anthony, what do you have to say? We got about 1 minute and 30 seconds, buddy.
Okay, basically my thing is just like what Kip said. We all have responsibility in this deal. I think that it needs to be something that needs to be talked about. These benefits and things like that should be as commonly talked about as how much the rules are changing in the NFL and stuff like that. It's common knowledge for everybody outside of the NFL to understand how the rules are changing the game, but no one knows about the benefits. So make it accessible for everyone to know about the benefits, so then at the end of the day, when these people are sitting back looking at players, they can say, okay, well, I knew about this benefit as well. So then it seems like it's a whole different type of negligence to put on the player.
We just got 5 more minutes, believe it or not, guys. I'm sorry, we got 5 more minutes Kenyon just gave us.
All right, and then also, you know, I think that like we talked about earlier, there needs to be more policing. Okay, a rookie symposium is an event that takes place over a couple of days. Okay, but the football season goes on for how many months, and these guys are rookies up until their second year. So one symposium here is not doing it. You know, these guys go to practice and they go to meetings. They go to meetings and they go to practice and they go to meetings and they go to practice. The only way they get good and the only way to get good at anything is through repetition. Okay? Now, the only way we're going to ever get good about knowing what's available to us and what's out there for us is the repetition of being able to see it, hear it, touch it, feel it, and everything else like that.
You guys need a newsletter that comes out every month, man.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there's always everything being posted about all the bad stuff, but there's never anything posted about the good stuff.
Right.
Now, if anybody out there wants to follow me, I'm at Dorsett Jr. on Twitter, at Dorsett Jr. on Twitter. Of course, you can hit me up on Facebook at AnthonyDorsettJr.com. There's a couple, Anthony Dorsett Jr. at Facebook. My Anthony Dorsett Jr. site will be back up probably in the next 2 weeks. We're just doing a whole lot of revamping and changing things to that as well. And if anybody ever wants to email me, you can email me at DorsettEliteFitness@gmail.com. DorsettEliteFitness@gmail.com. I travel all over the place. I do mentoring. I do speaking engagements. I do coaching. I do camps. I do nutrition. I do everything. So if anybody out there is listening and needs me anytime, at Dorsett Jr., at Anthony Dorsett Jr. on Facebook, and you can email me at DorsettEliteFitness@gmail.com.
And that's a good thing, too, because that keeps you busy, Anthony. I mean, you're not one of these guys that just sits back and stares at four walls.
No, let me tell you, I had a lot of time on my hands my first couple years out the league, and it led to a lot of depression and a lot of other things like that. I went through the whole bat of not coming outside and not doing this and not doing that and not going places and everything else like that. You know, and I know the feeling. And, you know, to be quite honest with you, it's something that, you know, you never fully recover from. But it's something that, you know, by the grace of God, I was able to, you know, pull myself out of that stuff and just be able to just keep going, because it took a lot of prayer and it took a lot of determination, trust me.
So what's your...
And that's, I mean, I still deal with things on a regular basis. I still don't sleep well. You know what I mean? I still have issues with my body and everything else like that. It's something that is just going to continue.
Right, but what's your best advice you can give to a player that's going to make the transition back into the public life?
The best thing I can tell you is like this, man. When you're at work, treat work as work. When you're playing football, treat it as football. When you come home and you get a chance to go back to your house, make your house be your home. You know what I mean? Don't take football home with you. Don't make football, don't let football define you as a man. Don't let your sport define you as a person, period. You know what I mean? And that way you can actually have some type of normality. But if all you're known by is that last name or that number on the back or the front of your jersey,
I hear you,
what's
man.
going to happen when your name's not being called? What's going to be happening when you're not being announced? You know what I mean? Where's your brain going to go then?
It's sad. I mean, it's sad.
And Larry, that's key right there, what Anthony just said, and this is true for any one of us. If your identity lies in what you do, your career, your job, or if your identity lies in a role you play, whether that be a brother, a sister, mother, father, you know, that type of thing, then I can pretty much guarantee you're going to be miserable and struggle. Your identity can't lie in what you do or a role that you play, because that's what typically then leads to depression, like Anthony said. What if that's then taken away from you? What are you going to do?
Well,
Where does your value come from?
I personally suffered a little depression myself, having things taken away from me in my life, but that's a whole nother talk. But listen, I want to tell you both, thank you so very much for coming on tonight and discussing NFL brain trauma. Kip, we're more than interested in following what you're going to do and how you're going to proceed with your plan to try to help and reach out to these people. And please keep me posted. Well, I'd be glad to have you guys back on anytime you're welcome on the Cleveland Sports 360 show. We're going to have to wrap it up for this evening. Thank you so much, Anthony. God bless you both. And I look forward to talking to you real soon.
Hey, man, thanks for having us. Hey, Kenyon, you ain't saying nothing today, brother, but hope all is well with you. Thanks for having us on again. Thanks for the extra time.
Okay, man.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. NFL brain trauma. It takes place more than people know it. It puts people in a dark corner. They really don't know how to deal with the stigma of not being a local hero or a national hero. Some people are bigger than life themselves when they're on the football field, but there's nothing bigger than life itself. Each life is a valuable thing. You need to hold on to it. You need to grasp it. And if you need help, you need to learn to go out and ask somebody for some help. It's not that big of a deal. As Kip said, there's a book, It's Okay for Men to Cry. I'm not suggesting we all start crying, but what I am suggesting, reach out and ask somebody to come and talk to you. Reach out and ask somebody to do you a favor and take you somewhere to get some professional help. It is available, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. We all have been through some sort of depression in one form or the other. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me live here on the Cleveland Sports 360 show at streamingsportstalk.com. Stay tuned. Coming up next, Unsportsmanlike Conduct, Kenyon Johnson, Kenya Huff, and Christian Patterson. God bless. We'll see you next week right back here with more of the Cleveland Sports 360 show.